Welcome to today's Autistic Moment, a podcast for autistic adults by an autistic adult. My name is Philip King Lowe. I am the owner, producer, and host, and I am an autistic adult. Thank you so very much for listening. After my wonderful recent conversation with Charlotte Bachelor, it feels only fitting to revisit my first discussion with Precious Lesley from the 2023 episode, BlackAutistics, Stop the Whitewashing. If you are hearing this for the first time, prepare to be empowered. If you're listening again, it's a reminder of why authenticity must remain at the core of the neurodiversity movement. Come join us for BlackAutistics, Stop the Whitewashing, on today's Autistic Moment. This first segment of today's Autistic Moment is sponsored by the Autism Society of Minnesota, known as AWESOME throughout Minnesota's autism community. As Minnesota's first autism resource for more than 50 years, AWESOME serves the whole state, the whole spectrum, for the whole life. Visit AWESOME at ausm.org. In addition to the wonderful guests and conversations on today's Autistic Moment, you can find many more resources. Visit todaysautisticmoment.com to listen to over 120 episodes released since 2021. Check out the episode schedule 2026 to see upcoming topics, guest information, and program descriptions for Season 6. On the website, you can learn about today's Autistic Moment, read the guest bios, explore the Adult Autism Resources links page, visit the Autistic Community Bulletin Board, read the blog, find out about TAM Autistic Consulting Services, sign up for a subscription to get ad-free interviews. Support today's Autistic Moment with a donation. Every episode, including this one, has a transcript. The transcripts are sponsored by Minnesota Independence College and Community. You can read the transcripts right on the website or download printable versions to help you save ink. The transcripts use a dyslexia-friendly font that are available in English, Spanish, German, French, and Chinese Simplified. Want more interaction with today's Autistic Moment? Follow today's Autistic Moment on Facebook, including our community group page, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. Also follow us on the YouTube channel at Today's Autistic Moment to watch Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions. New episodes will be coming up in 2026. After this first commercial break, Precious Lesley and I will discuss BlackAutistics, Stop the Whitewashing. Today's Autistic Moment can be downloaded and heard on most podcast apps, including Apple, Google Play, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, iHeartRadio, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, Amazon Music, Audible, Podcast Addict, Podcast Chaser. If you are looking for the transcripts, go to todaysautisticmoment.com, click on the episode you want to listen to, and follow the directions to find the transcripts. Thank you for listening to today's Autistic Moment. Are you looking for a space where you don't have to explain your autism to be seen, heard, or understood? We are the Autistic Peer Support Coaching Collective, the world's first autistic-led peer support coaching organization. In a world that pathologizes our differences, isolates us, and pushes toxic individualism, APSCC offers something radical: community, connection, and care. Our coaches are all autistic adults, trained professionals, supporting our fellow autistics with tools for advocacy, regulation, and everyday thriving. We know how hard it is right now. Stigma, burnout, misinformation, it's everywhere. But you don't have to face it alone. Peer support is not just helpful, it's necessary. Community is not a luxury, it's how we survive. Showing up in our full autistic selves with our stims, our sensitivities, and our joy is an act of resistance. In a world that tells us to hide or disappear, we choose to be visible together. You'll find one-on-one coaching, free support groups, educational workshops, and more, all rooted in the neurodiversity paradigm, built by autistics for autistics. Come be part of something real. Visit autisticcoaches.com. Support for today's Autistic Moment comes from Best Care Home Care Agency. Best Care offers PCA services, and your friend or family member could be your paid PCA. Best Care also offers homemaking, FMS services, and 2, 4, 5D services throughout the Metro and Greater Minnesota. Visit their website, bestcaremn.com, to learn more about their services.
MICC provides transformative education and training for autistic and neurodivergent adults to live independently, work purposefully, and thrive in community. With hands-on learning and caring guidance, MICC participants accomplish things they never imagined, from daily living tasks like taking public transportation or managing finances, to building and sustaining a career and lifelong friendships. Learn more about our inclusive community in Richfield, Minnesota at micc.org.
My guest today, Precious Lesley, is a Black autistic and ADHD adult. Precious is dedicated to providing education and establishing authentic relationships with job seekers and employers. Precious is the founder and principal consultant at Loud Nerd, a team of diverse experts including marketing and communication masterminds, top-notch facilitators, and best-in-class consultants. Each member of their team brings unique insights and innovative strategies to ensure tailored solutions for their clients. They serve as the bridge between the wisdom of experience and the innovative strategies of tomorrow, leveraging the insights and creativity that brings diversity to their work. As a Black autistic woman, Precious has personally experienced the compounding effects of racism, sexism, and ableism, and incorporates an intersectional perspective in her work, and encourages other disability advocates to do the same. Please join me in welcoming Precious Lesley. Precious Lesley, thank you for being on this episode of today's Autistic Moment. It is so great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the offer, and I'm super stoked to be having this conversation with you today, Philip.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Precious, we have started Black History Month, and I have been asking myself this question to say we need to have some focus on Black autistic people, Black autistic adults. And as I also mentioned in my description of this show, that the movement for neurodiversity, like a lot of movements, has our own version of systemic racism. And as with a lot of the other topics that I've covered, I have made today's Autistic Moment a safe space to talk about these things, to try to move us in a direction that will address the systemic racism that exists. So what I want to begin with is, what important information do autistic adults and our caregivers need to know about? As in, how is the movement for neurodiversity the movement that wants to bring greater inclusion for autistic people? Where is the whitewashing, and why do you think it's happening?
Yeah. So in the neurodiversity movement and more specifically autistic advocacy, we have this mantra, nothing about us without us. That's a very common saying, even in the greater disability rights movement. And yet far too often the conversation lacks the voices of Black autistics. And it really just lacks the nuance in general. And so when you're looking at the current diagnostic criteria for autism, in order to be diagnosed according to what's outlined in the DSM-5, an individual is measured on, and I'm using quote their words, but impairments in social interaction and communication, and their quotes again, restricted, repetitive, and stereotype patterns of behavior. Also in psychology and sociology, there's definitely an overwhelming consensus that one's culture has a massive impact on social norms, communication styles, behaviors, beliefs, etc. And yet, the criteria for being diagnosed with autism is based on how white male autistic children tend to present. I'm a firm believer in that intersectionality is of the utmost importance when we're discussing human rights in any form, but you can't even start to have a conversation about autism by its nature without acknowledging the intersectionality piece.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What does that intersectionality mean for you? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me personally, I am a Black autistic woman. Each of those aspects are integral parts of my identity. They shape the way that I interact with others in society. They shape the experiences that I have in those interactions, and ultimately shape the way that I perceive the world and my worldview. And I guess it goes both ways, as a Black autistic woman, I have experienced, sexism, ableism, and racism. And those experiences tend to have a compounding effect on one another. Ableism oftentimes interconnects with or exacerbates racism. And I think that's something that the current conversation, and the neurodiversity movement is really failing to give enough emphasis on. And it's something that definitely needs to be highlighted a lot more if we're going to see the positive progress that we're all working towards.
Right. Can you give some examples for our audience about ways that you see that Black autistic adults are not being included in that movement? Can you give some examples of that for yourself?
Yeah, so I think the movement does a great job of speaking about, barriers and concerns and accommodations in general, but it definitely lacks the nuance of a Black autistic person's experience in particular. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. As a Black person who grew up in a lower income, predominantly Black neighborhood, I had to, not only learn how to communicate within my community, but I also had to learn how to do what's called code switching, to speak a version of the dominant English in order to be viewed more favorably in school and then later on in life in the workplace. On top of that, as an autistic person, I had to learn how to mask to be able to navigate the complex world of education and the workforce. And it's just that added layer of effort that we have to put in on a daily basis. It leads to more issues with anxiety, more burnout. And it's not even something that I've heard be brought up in most conversations about some of the barriers that we face as autistic individuals.
Yes. I mean, one of the other places where we definitely see white supremacy existing is like when there are photographs of autistic people, children or adults, almost always they're white or blonde or, redhead or whatever. But, and I think, but you don't really see that many where Black autistic people are represented there. And correct me if I've got this wrong, but if they are there, it's an indirect way of trying to be polite.
Yep.
So, I'm sure you can kind of expound on some of that too.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lack of representation, and that's not only in the general American zeitgeist, but we also see that in the education system and the medical system, and it has a real world impact on individuals. For example, males are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed as autistic than females. And that gap widens dramatically when it comes to Black females. And we all know how important it is to receive that early diagnosis so that you can get the supports and the therapies that may be needed in order to set you up for success later on in life. And that oftentimes, gets overlooked when we're talking about Black individuals. And a lot of times that disparity in diagnostic rates is dismissed, blaming cultural stigmas or lack of access to resources, be it financial or, medical resources. However, studies show that Black parents do report behavioral concerns at the same rates as white parents do, but the medical community and education systems oftentimes lack the A, diversity, and then B, don't receive culturally competent assessment tools and training to be able to understand the impact of culture on how one's autistic traits are going to present, and even be able to, start that conversation that this child might be autistic.
Yeah. Yeah. After this next commercial break, Precious Lesley and I will discuss the barriers for Black autistics to navigate social expectations and cultural norms, and the tunnel vision when we are unaware of our own privilege when speaking about disabilities, racism, and being autistic. Autistic adults aren't getting the support we need. It affects our health, our income, financial stability, and our ability to live independently. ITI Assistive Technologies is changing that. This autistic-led team has created Decide, with tools built for neurodivergent minds. One lets users quickly pick from custom lists based on their energy level. The other guides them through big decisions using simple agree-disagree statements that match their values. Visit itiassist.com/decide for more information about downloading the app to get all features for just $5 a month.
Hello, autism community. My name is Lisa Morgan. I'm an autistic adult too, and I know firsthand what it feels like to be unintentionally harmed by well-meaning professionals when reaching out for help. My passion is to help autistic people find and use their own unique strengths to help themselves. Are you rule-based, a literal thinker, have a focused interest? Let's figure out together how to use the strengths of autism to find solutions. I offer life coaching for autistic adults and individualized workshops for professionals. To find out more, go to autismcrisissupport.com.
In 2026, today's Autistic Moment will bring you guests who will highlight how autistics thrive in these challenging times by recognizing the incredible strengths we have to raise the bar through hard conversations and community building. Stand up for autistics thriving with your assistance to today's Autistic Moment. Support today's Autistic Moment in any of the following ways. Make a one-time donation through the coffee icon when you tap on Support Today's Autistic Moment on todaysautisticmoment.com. Subscribe monthly via Patreon. Purchase items at Today's Autistic Moments logo shop. Share today's Autistic Moment with your family, friends, co-workers, and others through social media and/or by telling others about us. Donations are not tax deductible, but help keep today's Autistic Moment as a safe space. Thank you for supporting today's Autistic Moment. Welcome back. We are talking with Precious Lesley about her identity as a Black autistic woman is integrated and have compounding effects with the issues of sexism, racism, and ableism. Now we are going to talk about the cultural norms that intersect with the neurodiversity movement. As often happens, we're already talking about barriers as we talk about the basic information, but I think one of those barriers is just the unspoken attitude, I'm going to use the word, of the expectations of Blacks versus whites, the expectations of autistic versus non-autistic, the images that these things create, and what that does to cultures or groups of people that are trying to find their way to be part of movements like the movement for neurodiversity. I would guess that those things can really be impacting this whole discussion about whitewashing the movement for neurodiversity.
Absolutely. And so, a lot of the people at the forefront of the neurodiversity movement, are white individuals with, a white culture. And so, and with that comes, those cultural norms and unspoken expectations. And as autistic adults, I think we can all relate to our struggles at times with learning, social expectations, cultural norms, and, all those social norms that go with it. But for, someone that is not a member of the dominant culture in that movement, it adds an added barrier. Individuals may have to add on top of everything else, understanding the cultural norms of that dominant culture that's not theirs. And so just educating ourselves, being aware of that and making sure that we're taking steps to ensure that as a movement, we within the movement are being inclusive ourselves and making sure that we are inviting others in, that we're having a more nuanced conversation that is taking into account all the different ways that an autistic person can exist.
During my 50th show, there were some of my guests who talked about how difficult it is when autistics are trying to talk about the concerns we have, and either our voices are silenced or spoken over. As we talk about Black autistic adults, and we want to talk about the whitewashing, I mean, can you talk a little bit about how those conversations are either being silenced or spoken over, and what some of that might be like for you?
Yeah, so I think sometimes as a community, and speaking about the autistic community, as a marginalized community, we can sometimes forget or be unaware of our own privilege. And when we have the conversation about privilege, we sometimes get that tunnel vision and we see that, as a disabled individual, those who are able-bodied, who live in the society that we lived in that was, designed for able-bodied and neurotypical individuals, they have a privilege over me, in that situation. However, we will sometimes forget our own privilege. And so, as a white autistic person, recognizing that is a privilege. We live in a society where, the systems and structures and social norms of the greater American society were built on white culture that puts that individual at a privilege. And so just recognizing our own personal privilege, I'm an autistic person, who is speaking, and I'd say most times, sometimes, I don't know, depending on the day, I can be pretty articulate. That is a privilege. I need to recognize that and make sure that I am not speaking for or over individuals who don't have the ability or, choose not to speak verbally when it may be more convenient to get their voice out there, and, share thoughts and ideas with others outside the community. And so I think that recognizing our own privilege piece is something that we should really focus on within the community. And that's really going to lead to that more inclusive culture that we're all looking for.
Yeah. The other thing that I can't help but think about is the fact that in much of our society, that racial bias is still acceptable by many, and that in the last 5-6 years, we have seen the white supremacy escalating in intensity. And, more and more Black people are being marginalized, targeted. I live here in Edina, Minnesota, not too far from me. Back in 2020 is where George Floyd was killed. Mm-hmm. And the incredible things that we all went through when that occurred. So, and the thing is that even in the neurodivergent communities, we may have just either not noticed that the systemic racism is there, or we may have just not seen it for ourselves or not been aware of it. I don't know if that's a proper way. And please forgive me if I'm missaying that, but if you want to speak to that matter, go ahead.
Yeah, so you bring up a very good point, especially, with recent events. Something that I've been seeing brought up a lot more often these days within the neurodivergent community is autistic people being at risk when interacting with police officers who are not trained on how to recognize that this individual is autistic and how to de-escalate the situation versus escalating it. And so that's a very important conversation that needs to be had. And I'm very excited to see that conversation, out in the forefront of the movement and educating individuals on that particular issue. But again, it's one of those topics that lacks nuance, and so as a Black autistic person, I definitely understand, yes, that is a scary situation when encountering police officers. That is just compounded by the fact that I am Black. And so, if I'm in a situation where I am pulled over, and nobody likes being pulled over, it's a stressful situation. Throughout the country, there's a lot of reform needed within law enforcement, and I'm very well aware of that. And so, yes, I am on edge in that situation. I am likely to stim. I am likely to be slow in my responses because of the emotional elements that go into that. And I'm also aware that officer, may be more likely to view me in a negative light, because of my appearance. And it just increases the chances of that escalating, to a very scary situation. And so that piece, that nuance piece, that conversation, I'm not seeing. And that's something that we need to be really diving into on, in that particular situation, how ableism and racism can really compound one another to make a bad situation worse.
Yeah. I agree. And thank you for that answer. Now I'd like to move into advocacy. What important steps do autistic adults and our supporters need to take to advocate for Black autistic adults? And during this year of 2023, I am focusing on the strengths and achievements of autistic adults, because, to quote Becca Laurie Hector, nobody wants to spend their life talking about the things that stink. Yeah. So in this part, if you please, let's talk about the strengths and achievements that you see Black autistic adults making. And then talk about some ways maybe that you have been advocating that you think have been successful. And I noticed that you do some great work through Loud Nerd. You might want to talk about that work that you're doing that's part of the work for advocacy. So go ahead and give me your answers to those as you wish.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, oftentimes when we have that conversation about, famous or very accomplished autistic individuals, the examples that we see, are not Black individuals. And so that's definitely something that we should strive to be better at. For example, Armani Williams, he is a Detroit-based professional NASCAR driver who's had some amazing success. Really cool individual that people should check out. I do, and I'll send this link to you, Philip, so that you can share it in the show notes. But I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite DIB practitioners, and so Dr. Bernard Grant. He does some amazing work. I'll definitely share that link with you. He's a great resource for individuals who are looking to educate themselves on how autism and being a Black person intersect and the things we can do to, as a community, to, address that and be more inclusive. And I think it starts there, just really educating ourselves. You can't fix what you don't know. And, people don't know what they don't know. And so really seeking out books, podcasts, that content that's going to give you a starting place, to start doing that internal work and working on our own internal biases. Seeking out autistic, Black autistic speakers, trainers and things of that nature. And so I think that's really the best place to start. As far as my work, I am the founder and principal consultant of Loud Nerd, and I work with both employers and job seekers, with a major focus on autistic job seekers to navigate the sometimes overly complex job search process. All of my services are free for job seekers. And so, having practice interviews, updating resumes, just really putting in the work to help that individual have the best chance at landing a role that's going to fit their needs and then being able to advocate for themselves moving forward. I also, provide consulting services. I do workshops with employers on how they can improve their hiring process, their internal processes, and just develop a workplace culture that is not only going to attract a diverse workforce, but also create that culture that celebrates diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And we definitely have a conversation about how accessibility is too often left out of that conversation. And so that's the work I do. You can find more information on the website at loudnerd.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I probably spend too much time on social.
Yeah. And just for my listening audience, Loud Nerd is already in my adult autism resources links page, so that you can go and click there and access that information. And it is also included in the guest bio for Precious Lesley, so you can go in there and access that website, and you can find all of the incredible information that is there. After this final commercial break, Precious Lesley is going to talk about the strengths and achievements that Black Autistics are using to build up their tenacity. Today's Autistic Community Bulletin Board will follow. On February 24th, 2011, A psychologist shared the results of an evaluation I did with him and told me that I had Asperger's syndrome. I went through a 4-year period of feeling relieved, confused, happy, grieving, and felt totally lost in my life all at the same time. In 2017, I found the Autism Society of Minnesota, and it changed my life. I started learning about autism, meeting other autistic people, and discovering the local autism community. Since then, I have accepted that I am autistic and that I am proud to be the person I am. If you were recently told that you have autism, you need a consultant who knows how your life is being impacted so you can connect with the autistic community to find resources and support. Go to todaysautisticmoment.com and read about TAM Autistic Consulting Services. If interested, please fill out the intake form and make an appointment so we can begin working together.
Life managing you, or are you managing your life? Do you want to find more peace in your life? For many of our clients, self-care is a key to success. Skill building and feedback is essential for self-care. Looking Forward Life Coaching helps provide structure through our person-centered approach that has demonstrated growth for many of our clients. If you or a loved one needs help with structure and strategies around self-care, please visit us at www.lookingforwardlc.org, email us at info@lookingforwardlc.org, or call us at 612-504-7414. Self-care and resiliency can help you weather the storms of life. Looking Forward Life Coaching helps change stumbling blocks of life into stepping stones toward success.
On March 8th, Carolyn Keel will be my guest to talk about autistic women thriving. Carolyn is the host of Beyond 6 Seconds, a multi-award-winning podcast that focuses on the intersections of neurodiversity, race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and more. Carolyn will talk about how autistic women thrive in these challenging times. On March 22nd, LaToya Hinton will return to Today's Autistic Moment to talk about autistic women thriving in healthcare equities. LaToya has been conducting some panels with Umbrella ND about healthcare equities for autistic individuals from all backgrounds. LaToya and I will specifically focus on their findings regarding autistic women thriving to find healthcare equities. Please visit the episode scheduled 2026 on todaysautisticmoment.com for updates as they become available. Thank you for listening to Today's Autistic Moment. Welcome back. Precious Lesley is about to talk about the strengths and achievements of Black autistic adults. What do you think is the strengths and achievements, the ways in which Black autistic adults are using their challenges, their tremendous challenges, to build up their tenacity and achieve goals that they set for themselves? Go ahead and add your comments to that, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely out there achieving goals in all industries, we're not a monolith, and so we have various interests and goals that we want to achieve, and definitely crushing them. And I will say, there's one thing about facing a lot of adversity in your life. It definitely, when you make it to the other side, provides you with a lot of resiliency. And so it's definitely something that a lot of us do have. And, just speaking for myself, it's given me the ability to be a strong self-advocate, to be able to speak out and advocate for my own needs. And that's been wonderful, just being able to set those boundaries and you mentioned, speaking over individuals. And I don't know if that's ever happened to me. I get definitely be heard. And so, but yeah, we're out there, achieving nearly anything you can imagine. We're just not getting the attention. And so, but there's some great traction in that way too. And individuals are speaking out more and getting involved more. And that's what definitely compelled me to share more of my experience and do, podcasts and speak out publicly about it, because there does need to be that representation. And so, yeah, we're getting out there.
Yeah, that's all very tremendous. And I thank you for sharing all that information here. Precious, thank you so much for coming on today and having this conversation with me. And I want to encourage my listeners, encourage you, my audience, the challenges we all face as autistics and the successes that we are achieving or seeking to achieve. I said this in my introduction, is that the only way that the movement for neurodiversity is really going to be inclusive is if we listen to the experiences of Black autistic adults and we get a feel for their experiences, and we can include their experiences, their wishes into our movement, and that we can, I'm going to use the word, enculturate each other. And so it's a working together, not necessarily working on our stuff and their stuff or whatever. It's working together on the things that are challenging us, and with that discrimination, meeting us in the face. And so I want to encourage all of us to do our part to include the diversity that is within neurodiversity and that sort of thing. So Precious, once again, thank you for being on today. It has been a great privilege to talk with you. And I hope your experience here has been really good.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me today and talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I appreciate the invite.
You're welcome. Would you like to listen to this conversation I had with Precious Lesley with no segmentation or ads? Sign up for a subscription to ad-free interviews on todaysautisticmoment.com. The subscription is only $12 a month or $144 for a whole year. Once you buy the subscription, you can click on any show where you see the logo for Today's Autistic Moment ad-free interviews to hear only the interview without interruptions, segmentation, and music. You can listen to all ad-free interviews going back to July 2025 and all upcoming episodes. Today's Autistic Community Bulletin Board. All these events and many others, such as sensory-friendly concerts, art activities, and museum information links are available on todaysautisticmoment.com/bulletin board. The Adult Coffee Club for autistic adults in Minnesota are held on the second Tuesday of every month, weather permitting, at Dogwood Coffee, located at 2700 University Avenue West, Suite 100 in St. Paul, Minnesota. The zip code for your GPS is 55114. The Adult Coffee Club's will begin at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on March 10th. No Coffee Club in April. May 12th, June 9th. Understanding Autism virtual classes are offered by the Autism Society of Minnesota. The next classes will be March 9th, 6 to 7 p.m., April 13th, 10 to 11 a.m., May 11th, 12 to 1 p.m., June 8th, 6 to 7 p.m. The Autism Society of Minnesota invites you to Family Fun Day at We Rock the Spectrum on Saturday, February 28th, beginning at 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The event will be at We Rock the Spectrum, located at 1020 Discovery Road, number 127 in Eagan, Minnesota, zip code 55121. Registration is open to attend the Minnesota Virtual Autism Conference, April 15th to the 16th, 2026. Register to get access to all conference, keynote, and breakout sessions, plus access to session recordings for a full month so you can revisit content on your own schedule. Save the date, May 17th, 2026, for the Steps for Autism. Go to ausm.org to get more information about these and other social and recreational programs, educational events, counseling services, and support groups at the Autism Society of Minnesota. Neurodivergent is a social club rooted in a vision of bringing neurodivergent Minnesotans together to build meaningful connections. Its core principle is to foster an environment where all are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of ability or preferences. Go to their website, neurodivergent.org, for more information, become a member, volunteer, and attend their events. Today's Autistic Moment is here because of the generosity of supporters and sponsors. Go to todaysautisticmoment.com and select Support Today's Autistic Moment to donate. If you have questions about today's Autistic Moment, please send an email to todaysautisticmoment@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Today's Autistic Moment, a podcast for autistic adults by an autistic adult. May you have an autistically amazing day. All of the guests meet with me on Zoom to record the interviews. The interview transcripts are provided by Otter. The podcast is prepared and edited on WavePad Masters Edition by NCH Software. The podcast is published by Spotify for Podcasters. The music that you hear is licensed to Today's Autistic Moment by PremiumBeat.com.